Michelle.
Hey, Kim. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Well, just to start us off, I'm going to play a little 40-second video clip just to kind of set the mood for tonight. And then I'll let you do the opening hook and tell us what we're talking about. You ready?
Sounds good.
Okay. Let me share my screen. The always the fun task of sharing the screen, but this time it's pretty easy because I only have one window open. Surprise, surprise. All right. We seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Just a little, that's not even 40 seconds, it's 12, but it's a really good set the stage. Here we go.
Just stop. Just stop doing it. You're going to drive me crazy.
Fine, I'll just go sit at my desk and be quiet. Sorry I annoyed you with my friendship.
Just a little clip from The Office there to start us out for the night. That always cracks me up. My kids love, or grown sons love The Office. And sometimes I wonder if they know how real it is.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about tonight, right? Have you ever had a work friend who you thought had your back until she didn't? So today we're going to dive into the most complicated dynamics in business. Work friendships between women. Are they real, or are they situational alliances that vanish the moment the stakes are high? Welcome back to the Business Chicks podcast, and I'm Michelle.
And I'm Kim. And today we are asking a question that I know every woman in business has probably thought about at some point. And that is, are work friends really friends? Or are they just work friends? And so, you go ahead, Michelle. You take the next point for a second.
No, I was going to say, the line between being close with someone at work, but wondering, would we actually hang out outside of the office if work didn't exist, right? Like, is that somebody I would hang out with outside of the office?
And yeah, such a big question. We spend so much of our time at work, and you do have to wonder, just like with any friendships, but at work, there's that extra dynamic of, like you said, would we really hang out if the office didn't exist? But, women by nature, I feel like after we get to this age, we've kind of been, hurt. We've had some issues with trust with friends along the way. So especially when it comes to work, we're a lot of times thinking, are they really supporting me? Or are they waiting for their chance to outshine me, throw me under the bus, etc.? So
absolutely. And that's what we're going to dive into today. Let's unpack the truth about it and see women, work, and friendship.
All right. Well, we all wish our work friendship could be something like the video I'm going to share for us. And let's see, she started all automatically. Let me rewind that before I share my screen. So Erin is on LinkedIn, and she's also on Instagram, and she does a lot of really cool stuff about women in business as well. And when we started talking about this topic, she is instantly who I thought of. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to see if Erin has anything about this. And sure enough, I love this. And the comments on this are priceless, but let's just watch the video first.
Hey, did you eat lunch yet? No, I forgot it at home. Oh, I'm about to order Chipotle. Do you want to get in on my order? Oh, thanks, but I'm good. I have free delivery. Come on, you gotta eat. Ready to pull it? Thanks. Hey, Jeff tried setting up that meeting without you again. Again? Why is he always leaving me out? It's literally my client. Yeah, so I just went in and added you to the invite. What? What'd you do that for? I don't know. It was easy. I just did it. Oh, shoot, my dog walker just canceled last minute. Oh, that sucks. Why? I don't know, but I have to finish my timesheet by noon. Oh, I got it. You go. Really? Yeah, it's like the same as last week, right? I got it. Go. Oh, lifesaver. You did a really good job on this client pitch. Oh, thanks so much. Erin actually helped structure that deck last minute, so I owe her some credit. Really? Yeah, she's like super good at design. You should give her a raise. You got this, and follow for more.
So that is so cute. And, we all probably kind of wish we had that work friend like that, right?
Absolutely.
That was a pretty strong friend. But then you start reading, and I think, people are reading a little bit too much into the skit. Then you start reading through the comments, and people are like, well, it's one-sided. And it's like, well, yeah, but she was playing both roles. So there's that, right? But,
right.
In general, we kind of all wish that we had that work friend like that, always had your back, always there for you, never being kind of cutthroat. But well, before I go to the but, let me tell you this. So Gallup reports that employees with a best friend, and that's in quotes from the source I got it from, at work are 7 times more likely to be engaged, yet women often hesitate to fully trust these relationships. So I'm going to share a little bit from this Gallup poll, because some of these statistics weren't necessarily surprising, but it was, kind of interesting that, let me see, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Kind of interesting how high, in my opinion, that some of these statistics were. So it says, feeling connected at work doesn't only make employees happier, it has several other clear effects on employee and organizational performance. For example, 94% of employees agreed that they're more productive when they feel connected to their colleagues and when compared to employees who don't feel connected in the workplace. One of the things that's interesting, Michelle, is that further along, I'm going to read a couple more of these statistics, but further along, they talk about that actually this doesn't matter if you're in person in the office or if you're a remote, as long as the connection is there. So I thought that was interesting, because that's kind of one of the arguments that you hear sometimes at employers as well. That's why I return to work and all those things, but it actually showed that that didn't matter. So anyway, more than 3 in 5 employees with high social connectivity report being highly engaged, whereas just 1 in 10 with a low social connectivity consider themselves highly engaged. That is wild. That's huge difference.
That's a lot.
So then employees who have strong social bonds with their coworkers are more motivated to perform. Individuals who report having connection at work are 7 times more likely to exhibit better engagement, customer relations, work quality, and well-being. And then here's the one that just kind of blew me away. Highly engaged teams show 21% greater profitability. That's
interesting. Okay.
Wild, isn't it?
It is wild. And that's it. I love that, but it makes sense, right? It kind of goes back to what we talked about before with in some of the previous episodes, where we talked about how, being engaged like that, or, together as a team, when you're working as a team, how others want to be productive for the leaders with that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, for sure. I mean, we just had our team building at work. And one of the things I think is always cool to watch in the team building is, I'm not a super athletic person. So it's not like my favorite thing to do in the world, especially when ours are so action oriented. But I always love getting to know people that are kind of outside your normal circle. I don't want to use the word clique, but our normal circle, and realizing how much you have in common. And then kind of what we've talked about before is when you build those connections, it's so much easier to do things for other people, because you find yourself wanting to do it for your friend because you have become friends and friendly. So it's just interesting how that works to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And same sort of thing, right? So, one of the people on our team, I mean, I work with the majority of people in our company. So most of the people I know and I work with on a weekly, daily basis, something like that, just based on my position there. But it's interesting how, they're everyone on our team I worked with, but there is, was one person that he and I worked together very closely almost every day. We're on the phone together. We're doing things together for our customers. And I think that showed when he and I were on that team together, how well we communicate.
True.
Because we do it every day.
Right. That's a very, very good point. That's a really good point. And, and then it also shows, the other coworker who I'm interacting with all the time, and it shows, like, it does show in your communication style when you're, in that kind of social setting and in a professional setting, and it does tend to mirror itself, right? That's so interesting.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's one of the reasons why, and, in a few minutes, we're going to be watching a video that gives a few other reasons why. But I think that's one of the more altruistic reasons why companies do those kind of team building things, right?
Yes.
Is, to build that. And I think we talked about this before when Vince was here, to build that rapport and hopefully to build those connections. And then, of course, when you look at the Gallup stats, it could be argued that that is more self-serving than we thought because of profitability.
Right.
But still, I guess at least it's a positive and a positive. It's not like, something
exactly
negative for a positive.
That's exactly it.
So we are going to watch right now, the first 1 minute of this video. And then in just a second, we'll talk about a little more. And then just a second, you're going to, I guess, talk us through a few more minutes of this video. But this video is excellent. I had not ever heard of Jennifer Brick. She is also a leadership coach. And we are not ever afraid to share other leadership coaches, other experts, especially women. We are here for it, right, Michelle?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Jennifer, thanks for making such a great video if you happen to see this. But let's watch. I'm going to turn this just for the sake of time. Playback speed, I'm going to put it at 1.25. I found that it was still easy to understand what she's saying. And we're going to just listen to the first minute 17, or watch and listen to the first minute 17.
Either you fully agree with that statement because you've learned coworkers are not your friends. Either you fully agree with that statement because you've learned the hard way, or you're rushing to your keyboard to tell me how wrong I am because you haven't learned the lesson yet. So let's talk about the reasons why coworkers are not your friends. Have you ever worked at a company where everyone that you worked with was really close? Not only did they spend time together for formal after-work activities like team building events, but it always seemed like people from work were choosing to spend time together, going to happy hour, trivia night, spending time together at the weekends. You might have been excited about this. Your job came with a group of friends. Great, right? But what happened when someone left the company, or when you left the company? You get removed from the team group text and all of a sudden your phone becomes much quieter. Naturally, you also see your work friends less because you're not spending more than 40 hours a week together in the office. Sure, at first you call each other, you text, you see each other, but they're busy, you're busy, and the time between those interactions gets further and further apart. Until one day you realize just how far apart you've drifted when you find out about their new job through a LinkedIn notification. This is expected with 98% of the friends that you make at work, because work friendships are situational. I'm not gonna lie, it sucks when this happens. I still have a bunch of old work friends that I miss, but life happens. While I think this is the saddest reason.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it right there for a minute and let's talk about that. Yeah, situational, right? I mean, that's something you and I were talking about. That's the question. One of the big questions that we talked about in the beginning is, are you friends with people at work, especially, women? And clearly, right, there are male-female friendships as well. But since we're talking, to women in business, for the most part, we're going to be talking about women. But it is true that friendships at work tend to be contextual. We spend so much time at work, right? We spend, as much time, I guess, almost in terms of awake time at work as we do at home. So it's natural, I think, that we're going to bond, right? And then there's lunch, right? There's the things that come up, the things that we go through. There's coffee runs, but the question often comes up, is the friendship going to survive outside the office? And, I know later we're going to talk about some ways, maybe we can protect that if we're really interested in protecting those friendships. But it's a big question. It is, you and I have been in business for a while. We've seen people come and go. We've had good friends that, maybe we don't even talk to. I know there are several that I used to consider really good friends. Now, I will say, as I've gotten older, throughout time, feel like I'm more connected with people I used to work with, say the last 10 years, than I am before that. And I don't know if that's age, maturity. What have you noticed?
I think it has a lot to do with age. I think, to me, and I notice is, when I first started out, and I'm still, Facebook friends with some of the people that I worked with, but I was much younger than they were at the time. And so our lives were in a very different situation. So when they left or when I left, we weren't in the same space outside of the office. Now, as I get older, I'm with people at work that I'm in the same space with. Now, I'm also have people that are much younger that I'm not in the same space with. So, it's an interesting dynamic as you grow and age through business like we have, to me.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like as you get older, for one, for the most part, if you had kids, they're grown, right? And so, there's not that kind of, I don't want to say interference. We love our children, but I mean, there's not that commitment, so you have more free time in certain ways, as you get older. And I think you've been there, done that. You've been betrayed. You have, experienced both sides of it. So I feel like as you get older, and maybe it's not even older, maybe it's experience is the right word, but as you gain experience, as you gain maturity, I feel like you put more value maybe, or, just value on the sincerity. Maybe not more value. I'm probably digging myself a hole here, but not more value on the relationship itself, but more value on making sure the relationship is real. If you're going to call it a friendship, obviously there's reasons to have alliances at work. Well, and we'll talk about that later. And there's reasons, you want to be friendly because you don't want to be uncomfortable with anybody. But in terms of choosing to be friends, I think if you're going to call it friendship, I think as you gain experience, maturity, if you're going to call it a friendship, you're going to put more into making it a true friendship.
I agree. And I think as you grow in business and your career and things like that, you learn to tell the difference. I think in the beginning, you don't know the difference because when you're in your 20s and 30s, everybody's your friend, essentially, as you come into a new place, as you do things together, different things like that. And then when you meet somebody in there who's similar to your age, similar to your situation, you tend to gravitate to each other, and whether or not that lasts for the long term is another story. However, I think as we go through our careers, we learn that sometimes we're more cautious in that because we've been burned, because there are times where things happen when you're younger and you can't appreciate that it is a like this contextual friendship. And you don't really know what that is in your 20s and 30s unless you've been hit with it, right?
Absolutely. And then there's all these other dynamics. So there's contextual, right? Then there is, your relationship with supervisors, and can you be friends? And then as you grow into leadership, can you be friends with your subordinates? Because there is that in both of those types of relationships, there is a power imbalance, right? The more senior, the more, the higher position is always going to have a little bit of leverage over the other position, especially if you're writing reviews, especially if you are, in charge of promotions and pay and those kind of things. There's a lot of dynamics going on there.
Absolutely. And that puts it in a weird situation if you're both in the same level when you're friends and then one moves up. Whether they're a higher level and your boss or a higher level and not your boss, it's still a higher level. It puts it into a different perspective when you're having that situation for both people in the friendship.
Absolutely. It's, here we are back to that thing, right? I wonder how many men sit around talking about
Right.
We're back to the thing that women are thinking about all of this, right? We're thinking about, do I trust her? Is she my friend? Is she going to stab me in the back? I don't know that men are having those same kind of thoughts or having those same kind of dilemmas.
Exactly. I highly doubt it.
It's just so funny. It just goes back to that concept of women. We can't just be. We have to think about all these different things, And one of the things, I came across this one clip, but before I play this, I have to tell you were talking about, when you're young, you think everybody's your friend. This one clip that I didn't include in the show clips, but it would have been perfect for what you just said, was a girl who is starting out in her first job, and everybody goes to lunch and they leave her because she's just started this job and they don't know her yet. And so everybody goes away. And she said this older gentleman notices her, and he's in a cubicle, down from her, notices her sitting there and kind of looking, forlorn. And he says, listen, I need to teach you something. Your work friends are not your friends. And she's like, what? They say hi to me. They ask me how my day's going. And he's like, no, one of the hardest lessons you'll learn is work friends are not your friends. And then she goes on to say that she has learned that many, times, learned that hard lessons about that as through her career. So anyway, that was interesting that you said that.
Yeah.
Because it reminded me of that video. And anyway, now this is high school, this clip that we're about to play, but I would argue that there are times that the workplace, especially among women, can feel like high school.
Absolutely.
So we'll see when you watch this clip if you recognize anything that could also have to do with the workplace. So here we go.
Here, this map is going to be your guide to North Shore. Now, where you sit in the cafeteria is crucial because you got everybody there. You got your freshmen, ROTC guys, preps, JV jocks, Asian nerds, cool Asians, varsity jocks, unfriendly black hotties, girls who eat their feelings, girls who don't eat anything, desperate wannabes, burnouts, sexually active band geeks, the greatest people you will ever meet, and the worst. Beware of the plastic.
So funny because that is high school, but
But I mean, you think about it, right? It's kind of the same sort of thing. You walk into, I went to 10 schools in 12 years.
oh
So,
wow.
this is a whole thing of the same type of thing of when you start a new job,
Mhm.
right? You walk in and you're like, okay, who's been here forever?
Mm-hmm.
Already the friend group, the clique that's already created itself in there,
Mm-hmm.
the wanting to fit in, the one but not wanting to get too personal or being too involved in my personal life while I'm here,
Right.
all in the competition and who, even though you may be in a position that isn't competing with anyone, what do other people think is the competition or think of you as the competition? Or are you walking into a landmine of
Yep.
things that have happened in the company, either
Mhm.
around your position or around this group, or those are all of the things. And again, I'm sure men don't walk in and think this at all, but I feel like that is something that you walk into, in my opinion, with every new high school. You walk in being the new kid, and then it's the same sort of thing when you start a job, because, and I even remember as the joke in a lot of times when, the next person gets hired and it's like, oh, I'm not the newbie anymore. And it's just that whole, it's the same type of mentality.
Right. Well, it's such a good point because, it makes a lot of sense now. I remember when you, started at our company, and I guess I'd been there about 3.5 years at that point, but you walked into a very female dominant side of the building, right? And our side of the building, it was very female dominant. And I would say a really tight group of females, because we went through COVID together. We went through a bunch of things together. And so now it makes a lot of sense how you were able to fit in so quickly. It's like high school, right? I mean, unfortunately,
right.
It is in many ways. And you were able to fit in so well. And that explains it a lot. I didn't know you'd been in that many high schools. But yeah, definitely work has many similarities to high school, especially when it comes to women and understanding the dynamics and all of those things, because that is an area where women are constantly thinking. Well, it's just another area where we women are constantly thinking, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it goes back to how we're raised again, right?
For sure. And so, this video, we're going to get back to this video that we were watching, and, we'll play a little bit. You tell me if you want to stop and talk about anything. There's some natural kind of stopping points that I'll stop it. But this video, again, from Jennifer Brick, really gets into some of the things that you had in the show notes, about the different areas, the different kind of challenges, and why some of those challenges and dynamics exist, aside from, what we've talked about in previous weeks, like, do you step on other people on the way up, women, emotional a lot. But anyway, I'm going to let this play. And then if there's any point that you want to stop it, just let me know. And otherwise, I'll stop at some of these kind of natural stopping points.
And why coworkers can never really be your friends, it's not the most problematic reason. Because what can underlie a workplace friendship might sabotage your career and your wellness. I've got a theoretical situation for you. The promotion you've been working hard for finally opens up. You excitedly apply, and you don't hold back from telling your work friends about it, which is how you find out that your work friend Haley also applied. There's only one spot open for this promotion. Haley is your friend, and she knows how bad you want it. So how do you feel? This is something that has happened to so many of my clients. Some of them felt betrayed by Haley when this happens. For others, they felt a massive shift in the dynamic of the relationship, because even if they weren't competing, they felt like Haley was competing with them. Haley made herself into the competition, even though they had positioned themselves as the only and obvious choice for that promotion, because they had been leveraging their UAQ. If you don't know your UAQ yet, go follow their UAQ. What's even more telling? What happens when one of you gets a promotion? When you get the promotion, will they truly be happy for you? If they get the promotion, can you truly be happy for them? No matter what the situation is with you and Haley, one thing that you will not be able to change from there on out is the office gossip that goes along with this. The you versus Haley narrative constructed. It's all anyone can talk about, and everyone has taken a side. One of you is the victim, one of you is the villain, and you don't want to be either of those things. In the workplace, politics and power underlie each one of the relationships that you build. But perhaps in this situation, something more sinister was at play, and Haley isn't who you thought she was.
Oh, I'm gonna stop it right there. So the first concept, it was like dead on for what you'd put in the show notes. So I'll let you talk about scarcity.
Well, right. So there's a couple of things to me with scarcity, right? If only one woman gets a promotion. So there's only one position available, and competition can poison that friendship, right? Is what she's saying. It can bring out the worst in people, and that's the, stepping on people, on your way up, that sort of thing. And I
The
guess
whole Whitney Bird thing, right? The whole Whitney,
that's exactly
the seat at the table.
That's exactly it. There's one seat, there's one promotion, there's one, that sort of thing. And I think what we lack in that as females, and I can only speak for myself, but my experience is that I think what we lack in that is understanding that, number one, if that's the only position, is this the right place for me if I don't get it? And if I don't get it and someone else does, then good for them. And now it's to me to decide what happens to me, but then it goes to the other side of that, and I'll do, both sides of this coin, right? What if that person takes credit for your work to get there?
Yep, that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I was also thinking about a power imbalance. Like, what if that person is just so much more aggressive, assertive than you are? I know there's probably a lot of women out there going, but one time or one thing, but what if this person is always doing that? How do you balance, like, especially if you're all part of the female group, right? How do you balance not wanting to make waves, not wanting to make people choose sides, but also not wanting to be a doormat? It's a struggle.
It is a struggle. And I think this is something that, and I'll be honest, this is something I didn't learn how to deal with for years going through my career, right? But I think the one thing that I realized, and that's probably why as you get older, you're more cautious about who you're friends with at work, more than just work friends, is because it is a situation where I don't want that negativity in my life, and I choose not to. So I will be professional and cordial and do that, but I'm not going to feed into it.
Right.
And that's the only way I can protect myself. And I think that's the mentality that we have to have in those situations, is protecting ourselves.
Absolutely. And you bring out a very good point. I mean, that is the general, when we were doing research for the show, that is the general consensus I see out there from leadership and business experts, from male or female, is generally speaking is, you've got to protect yourself first. And remember, everybody doesn't have the same motives, doesn't have the same values, the same behaviors as you do. And so, they were kind of saying that you shouldn't get so close that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for the sake of the friendship. I thought that was absolutely an interesting point, because it's something, again, that's hard for us women to do, because you don't want to be seen as the bitch, right? You don't want to be seen, but then you can't be the doormat, or you're going to find yourself losing out on, because there are, you'll lose out on other promotions, because there are leaders out there that will say, if you can't stick up for yourself, then why would I want you in a leadership position?
Exactly.
If you can't have your own back, if you can't stand up to the competition, the bully, or whatever we want to call her, then you're not right for a leadership position. You've got to be able to take up for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's such a weird line, because, again, especially if you have those, those clicks, and I think that's the next thing that we're going to talk about in the video, watching the video, but especially if you have those clicks, it's really hard, because you're like, well, if I make waves, right? If I fight for this position, if I stand up for myself, are people going to choose sides? Am I going to be the odd one out? Do I need to, give in to let this other person, have it, right? Or do whatever, take credit for your work, whatever may happen. And do I let that happen to make peace or save the peace? a really complicated thing when we start talking about women and feelings.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to let her play for a couple more minutes because she has some good insights in here. All right.
Something we need to be honest about is the fact that people are going to work to get a paycheck. We also exist in a culture where people are trying to get promoted, make more money, and gain more influence. These desires themselves are not good or bad. They just are. However, how some humans choose to conduct themselves in order to achieve these desires is a whole other story. Like me, I know a lot of you think beyond yourself, and you're not always making decisions solely based on what's in your own best interest. And you also assume that other people conduct themselves this way. But this is not the reality. Human nature is self-protective, and most people will prioritize themselves. Don't believe me? Watch what happens when there's a bonus for a top performer or a Jimmy Choo sample sale in New York City. Things get wild. We also can't shy away from the fact that there is a small percentage of people who intentionally do harm out there. After all, corporate culture rewards characteristics that overlap with the symptoms of psychopathy. On the note of corporate culture, though, there's something else we need to talk about. Ping pong tables and comfy couches, free food, annual employee retreats that are really just big parties.
That's the new subject, but yeah, so that's kind of funny. That whole thing, people are not all as nice as we want them to be, right?
Exactly, as we would assume that they would be.
Right. Have you ever had an experience like that with somebody at work where they're just really undermining you, undercutting you, and you had to?
Oh, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I've had, you know, I think I talked about her before as one of my previous bosses who was out for herself, and ran a team that she would throw us under the bus and back up if it meant that, you know, she wasn't going to get recognized. And it wasn't even necessarily just about money. It was about she wanted that seat at the table and recognition. And our entire team knew it. And the only way to deal with it was to just be professional and keep doing your job. And, you know, I was very fortunate in that, you know, I had relationships with the owner and things like that in you know, I was able to have conversations with her not around. So the owner actually knew my work ethic and most of my other team to know that what was being said was not 100% accurate. So I was fortunate in that, but that's not always the way.
Yeah.
You know, there are times when people can undermine and not tell the truth and hide things and take credit for people, and nobody knows it because there's not that openness between other areas.
You know, it's funny that you use the word hide things because people probably think, you know, that you're talking about abstract or metaphorically, but actually at a past job, I had someone who worked for me who was in the, you know, who was my like my lieutenant, right? And things would hide things from me going into important meetings, you know, and I thought I was losing my mind for a few minutes, you know, because I was busy, things were going crazy, we were growing, the company was growing, and I would get ready for a meeting and I'd have a report that you know, this is back in the days when you would print out your reports, and, you know, that I had printed out and I had ready to take with me, and it just wouldn't be there. And I was, you know, did I leave it in my car? Did I leave it? Frantic, which then of course also puts me in a bad state of mind. Because one of the things, you know, that is always a work in progress for me is when things go awry, it can fluster me a little bit, right? And so it can kind of throw me off my game. And back then, especially because I was really young. And so then I would get flustered trying to find it. And then I'd be late for the meeting. And, you know, it was just a bad thing. And then I later learned from another coworker who figured it out that, you know, she was taking the stuff off my desk or off the printer, you know, that kind of thing, and actively trying to sabotage me. And that just kind of blew my mind that people, I mean, it was kind of a lesson to me because I feel like I'm a little naive, or at least used to be. And it was a lesson to me that people could really be mean for no reason.
For no reason.
Competition or wanting what you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was such a bizarre thing. Okay. We're going to let Miss Jennifer talk about the team building event, and let's see why most companies do the team building event. Of course, we know a little bit about it, profitability, what we heard in Gallup, but let's see how she describes it.
Camouflaged as corporate events. You have everything you need right here. There's no need to leave the office. Let's zoom out a little bit. For starters, are corporations subsidizing fun out of the goodness of their hearts? No, because you'll notice the ping pong tables generally go unused. The free food is keeping you in the office with no excuse to leave so you can get more work done. And the after work events and retreats for team building? Well, it's in the corporation's best interest for your coworkers to be your friends, especially if it gets to a point that the majority of your social life is derived from the people that you work with. When it comes time for you to consider leaving your job, you're not just leaving your job, you're leaving your friends, you're leaving your social life. You're leaving your support system. With so much on the line, you're less likely to leave. I've also heard countless stories of this taken to an extreme level. Some of my former clients have even found themselves decreasing the amount of time that they spend with their friends and family outside of work because their professional relationships have taken over their whole lives. In addition, when work is the source of your social life, you're also probably going to work more because all your friends are staying late. You might as well too, right? Enmeshed relationships are something I have observed in almost every toxic workplace. Boundaries between coworkers, work, and life don't exist. This can result not only in codependency, where you're relying on your job for a lot more than a paycheck, it can cause an even bigger problem. I'm
going to stop there. We talked about this last week. We'll get back to that in just a second. But what are your thoughts about that? I have to admit, I had not really thought about a lot of that. Again, this is definitely not blowing smoke. I think we're lucky. I think our team, our company does prioritize that whole fun family atmosphere and team building. But, no doubt it's to, I guess, advance productivity as well. But I hadn't thought about the whole, making sure you don't leave. I don't think it does that. But I guess, especially in big corporations, that's probably happening.
Well, not even in big. I've been with companies where they did lunch once a week for everybody. And it was not a big company, but everybody stayed in the conference room, ate in the conference room. It was supposed to be like, all departments coming together. And it just it felt daunting because you were all day not leaving the office.
Oh, and it was really bad if you didn't go.
Right. Oh, no, you couldn't not go. I mean, you're in the office, you're having lunch. They're ordering lunch in. They're buying you lunch. You're having lunch. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like it was really an option. And it was, it wasn't at a time where we had the work from home stuff or any of that. So it wasn't like you could say, well, I'm going to work from home that day, so I don't have to be. But it was a very daunting thing because it was an expectation. And it felt like if you did, even from the very beginning, when I first started with them and they started doing it and it was, really hyped up about this whole thing. And I thought, this is very odd to me that this is what you do, because to me, it's just, we sat there the whole lunch and talked about different things going on at work. And I'm like, this is not.
We will be friends.
Right. I'm like, this is not, this seems forced to me. Yeah. And that's just kind of, and from then on, it just felt weird to me to do it that way, because it didn't come across, and they didn't present it as, oh, let's get together and let's not talk about work. Let's do, blah, blah, blah. It was just odd. So I think the intention was good in trying to get all departments together in one spot to, kind of just have everybody be together and feel a part of everything. So I think the intention was good with that, but it was just odd. So,
well,
and uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And what's kind of weird too is that while that's looked at as like a good thing, right? Like when you were saying that, it's making me think like you will be friends,
right? Yes,
people like each other,
right.
But it just also made me think about, in general, right? When it comes to friendships at work. Like, for example, at our work, the guys, I think the guys go to lunch on a more regular basis than
Agreed.
The girls. But yet they will talk about the girls. Now, again, I feel like we're all super close. And I don't say that.
Right.
Right. And I mean, the guys, right. But they don't talk about the guys like the guys. It's like, well, the girls are doing this. Like we are.
Right. Right. Right.
And like, they're kind of, the girls group. But I
agreed. Yeah, absolutely agree. Because they do it more often than we do. So yeah, and they don't think about it like that.
Right. And I've never heard like one of the guys say about the other guy, which is just a whole nother aspect to it, right? I've never heard one of the guys say about another guy, well, are so-and-so, are they having an argument? Are they okay? Because lunch together today. But
Right.
you hear about the girls all the time.
I know, right. And it's like if somebody's busy and doesn't go to lunch or whatever, and it's like,
You mad?
oh, is that it? Are you guys having problems? You know?
Yeah, like we're all feelings, right?
Right. Exactly.
But,
Exactly.
in reality, I guess, women probably do get their feelings more hurt when we
Mhm.
feel like, that we are left out of the clique or that we are
Yeah.
somehow
Sure.
being ignored or that people have
Right.
chosen the other side if there's,
Mhm.
any kind of debate going on.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's fair enough. But all right, we're going to let Miss Jennifer finish off her video and then we'll go on to the next section about, in general, what are some of the biggest risks when we try to be friends at work? But here we go. We'll
Mhm.
let her finish here.
Who can end up relying on your job for your entire identity. When your work, social life, and status merge, they become the sole basis of your identity. What happens when it goes away? If I can find it, I'll drop the link in the comments, but it was a year or so ago, I read an article and it featured someone who had lost their job at a big tech company. And obviously she talked about how hard it was psychologically to lose her job. But what was really difficult for her was that her identity was entirely wrapped up in this job that she had. And recovering her self-identity was the hardest part of losing that job. I've also had clients that have been in extremely toxic work situations that have had a hard time leaving because their identity was constructed into their job. With burnout and toxic work culture on the rise, we really need to talk about this more. So what I want you to do now is go watch this video.
One thing she said, I want to go back for just a second because one of the things she said when she was talking about the team building events and how they want to create that feeling of family because then you're
Mhm.
less likely to leave. And it dawned on me, that is another one of the risks, right? Of having
Mhm.
really close connections at work is when you start to really, and another video I saw was like one of the worst things that you can say is calling a workplace family because it does
Mhm.
make you stay sometimes in toxic workplaces too long. And it does make you sometimes put up with behaviors that you shouldn't
Yes.
be putting up with at work because you would if it was your family, right? So
Right.
that's an interesting take on it that I hadn't
Mhm.
really thought about is that whole, we talked about last week about losing your identity and everything and how
Mhm.
your identity is wrapped up in your work. It can, have all sorts of problems, but when you look at it in the sense of friendships too, and your identity is I work here with these people, I can see where that could become a bad burnout risk, and it could become
Mhm.
an excuse where we excuse things that we wouldn't excuse elsewhere because we don't want to lose the family.
Right, right. And I've had a position where, and when I was running a department and I felt bad in a situation because I didn't want to leave, and it was one of my direct reports who actually is still one of my very, very good friends.
Mhm.
And she and I were like, well, you're not leaving me here alone. And, and so there was a lot of back and forth about the
Mhm.
whole situation of, well, you're not leaving. If you leave, you have to take me with you. Or, if
Yeah.
that there was a whole thing about the guilt of knowing that it was a toxic situation and
Mhm.
not wanting to leave someone that you're very, very close to alone,
Well, you and I've heard that from other people that we know and that we interact with, where if you take so and so, you have to take so and so, from other
Right.
places, right? And so
Right.
it's
Right.
definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very much so. So, you know, those are kind of all the challenges that we talk about, but let's talk about the frenemy trap. So that's where good friendships can kind of, go
Mhm.
wrong or create challenges. But what if they're not good friendships? So,
Right.
one of the things I did is I started looking for, I just wanted to see for myself, right? I started looking for videos about fake friends and like frenemies in general. And the next video I'm going to play was pretty interesting because it was not about work friends. But when I started watching, I started listening. These YouTube shorts start automatically when you go to the page instead of starting on pause. But when I started like looking through these videos, I was really amazed at how when we're talking about work frenemies and life
Mhm.
frenemies, they really share a lot of the same characteristics. And
Right. Mhm.
when you're thinking about how do I know at work, right? How do I know who I can trust? How do I know who's
Mhm.
really a friend and if they're just a work friend or maybe even a frenemy? And
Mhm.
what it kind of pointed out to me was that you can really look at the same kind of characteristics of fake friends in real life and fake friends at work. So I'm going to play this one, and it's really good. But then the one after that is the one I think is so cool. But we're going to play this one first. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Here we go. And we got a comment over there from It's a Drummer thing. I think that's my husband giving us a little comment over there telling us hello.
Giving us our uplifting comment. I appreciate it.
Okay, here we go. Let's see what. There we go. All right. Let's see if it'll.
Coworkers are not your friends. I'm Kendall Berg, that career coach, and I'm here to help you progress your career and move up the ladder without burning out or losing your mind. There was definitely a time in my career where there was an individual I worked with. I thought we were good friends. We went to lunch together. We chatted often and would complain about a lot of the same things. What I came to find out is that this individual was really, really close with our boss, and conversations between the two of us where we were equally complaining about things our boss were doing were being repeated to our boss with just my side of what was happening. And it was a very big learning lesson for me, because we want to get along with people we work with. We want to feel like we can trust them. And what ultimately happens is some people are just frankly not trustworthy. Just do not gossip about the people that you work with people you actively work with. Now it's going to become an issue. I've also had many clients come to me where their relationship with their boss is a little friendlier than what should be considered normal. And it causes other issues because they feel uncomfortable advocating for themselves. Their boss tells them too much information and then they don't know what to do with it. Their boss discusses other employees with them, and that's not good as the boss or the individuals. So just being careful that you're maintaining healthy boundaries with the people that you work with. Again, doesn't mean you can't get along with them. You can't go to lunch. You can't be friends-ish. But we don't want to be putting ourselves in a position where something can negatively impact your career.
I love that.
Your coworker.
You're going to be friends. You can be friends-ish.
I like it.
I love the way she says that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the risk, right? Is if we get too close and someone isn't a real friend, and especially if they're not just not a real friend, but they're actually a frenemy, or they actually they're a fake friend, you know,
right.
That's some of the pitfalls that can happen, and it's tough, right?
Oh yeah. And I've had somebody like that, another female that I worked with at one point, and we were in the same department, but not like neither of us worked for the other, but literally you would say the sky was blue and she would say it was green. And then she would go to the boss and say that the sky was blue, but that I said it was green. So, and it was, it was not fun. She did not make it too long there. Luckily, it was figured out by other people.
That's good.
But yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting ride.
Well, you know, that for sure, I imagine, because that whole thing, you know, what you're talking about there and what she was talking about in this video, to me, is probably one of the biggest things that I've experienced throughout my career pretty consistently, right? Is people that aren't really out to get you, and they're not really bad people, but they're opportunistic. And so if they, whether intentionally or whether in the moment, if they see or realize an opportunity for them to shine, look better, get ahead, I feel like sometimes that information just slips, right? So whereas you are both there having that conversation, you're both saying the same things, you know, having the same criticisms, if you will, having the same complaints. If those other people can see a way in the heat of the moment, or we're not even the heat of the moment, but in the moment, maybe talking with the boss, talking with the supervisor, can see a way, consciously or subconsciously, to slip that in to make themselves look better. They might not sometimes realize or even think about the fact that they're making you look bad. They're just thinking about making themselves look better. Right.
Exactly.
And so that's just, you know, that's such a risk. I think that, you know, it just bears caution, right? It just means that we need to be cautious, because even if that person might be your friend, if it came down to it, if they saw an opportunity to take advantage of it, then that information you shared could put you at risk.
Right.
And that's sometimes I think one of the hardest lessons to learn, because you think your responding. And what you're really doing is giving
Right.
ammunition.
And you think you can trust them because they're saying it back. Or
Right.
they're saying something similar back. So you're like, oh, they're not going to say anything because they're saying the same thing.
Mhm. Yep. And I think that's one of the biggest risks that us all
Mhm.
women have to watch out for. So she is going to talk
Absolutely.
about, she's in her video, she's talking about, and this is Tanya J Coaching, Tanya J Coaching, another one I had not seen, but when I was researching for the videos, came across hers. And she is talking about, in this section, she's talking about fake friends. And then in the next section, she talks about workplace threats. So I'm going to let both of those play through. It's just a short portion of this video, but it's so good. All right, here's Miss Tanya. Tanya.
I am back with another video, and today I'm going to talk about some of the people at work that you all are dealing with, have dealt with, will deal with in the future, particularly if you are confident, if you are self-assured, if you are highly skilled. You can be a target for people who are perhaps triggered by some of those things about you, especially in toxic work environments. Toxic work environments, all of these people that I'm going to mention today.
I know we'll talk about this in a second, but that's our tall poppy syndrome.
Yes. Yes.
They're in that environment and they are part of what is making the environment toxic to begin with. So I'm going to go over the 5 threats, the 5 type of people who are the biggest threat to you in the workplace.
Okay, there we go.
The next type of person at work to be aware of are these friends that you all say that you have. Yes, the fake friends. Now, you might have some friends at work, but for the most part, I would be very, very careful about this because people, there are those who will smile in your face. You will start going to lunch with them and you're telling them all your business. Now it starts to go beyond work. Now you're telling them about your personal life, right? Yeah, you're cool, right? You use the word friend and you seem to apply it at work. However, there are people who do this intentionally or they're not intentional, but when they get in a position where they're now in competition with you, they will throw you under the bus. They will leak some of your personal information if that means that they can get ahead somehow. They are gathering information to use against you later. They're the ones who are out here planting seeds that ultimately are damaging to you. And you might wonder, what's going on? Or why are people acting away? Or why is my manager switching up? And sometimes your manager is this person. The managers who try to act like they are so close and cool with you and I'm not like most bosses. These are the ones who will use that information later, so be very careful. So the thing that I say to be mindful of is to stop viewing people at work as the type of friend that you might have outside of work. And if you are going to make friends and pursue friendships at work, I would ask that you hold people to the same standard that you would for people outside of that job. So be very careful. You don't have to share personal information to be friendly with people at work. And I would make sure that I'm consistent in what I say is a friend. At the very least, make sure that people's actions align with their words. Don't go by what people say, go by what people do. These people are the biggest threat to your reputation. The next group of people are the thieves at work.
Yeah,
people at work are stealing.
For a second, so we don't get in trouble for copyright. But yeah, exactly what she was saying is what we were just talking about, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be intentional, but you are giving them ammunition if they should ever need it.
Exactly. And those are people sometimes that you don't think you're in competition with. You're in competition with, and you may be at some point and not even know it, or careers moving different directions, things like, those are all the things that unfortunately you have to think about.
Or it may just be one of those women, I think that, and it may be just one of those women that feel like there is that only one seat at the table. And so they want it. And they're going to do what they can to make sure you are not their competition for that seat at the table. Even if you feel like you're not in competition for a role, like you may be thinking, well, we're in different departments, we're in different areas, we'll never be in competition. It depends on what they consider competition.
Right.
That's an important point. All right. So now she's talking about the workplace threat. And then when she's done with this, then we're going to talk about, remember how she said, make sure that you're holding them to the same standard. Make sure their words align before you consider them a true friend. That goes back to that whole fake friends at work and fake friends not at work, kind of same thing to look out for. But here we go.
They're stealing ideas. They're stealing your work and passing it off as their own. And yes, sometimes this is your own manager. Okay. Be very careful with people who love to be around you and take what you have and then use that to prop themselves up and not give you any credit. They know that you're brilliant and they'll tell you. They'll tell you like, oh, you're so smart. I know, like I've had this experience. Like sometimes I talk to people, and it'll be people who are like not above me in terms of the org chart, who will have conversations with me and they start bringing out a pen and start writing things down. I'm like, what are they writing? Taking notes? It's because I'm an ideas person. I'm always running off the mouth with information, and they are jotting it down because they're like, yeah, they're going to use that. They're going to say that. They're not going to credit me. They're not going to say anything. So be very careful with your intellectual property and with your ideas. That's valuable at work. So be very careful here. How do you handle this? You need to always claim your work, claim your contributions. Make sure, like, don't be shy, present your own work. Don't let anyone say, oh, like I'll present and I'll mention you. I got it. I'll present my own thing. In emails, like make sure that you put your name in. Yes, I was, so excited to work on this. And I shared this idea with so-and-so. Like people get scared to do this because people will make you feel like it's bad, especially your boss. But no, you have the right to claim your work and be given credit for what you are doing. These folks are the biggest threat to your visibility.
Okay, I love that. Now, how do you feel about, and again, this may be a generational thing. That was one of the hardest things for me to learn how to do, was how to claim my work, claim my input without feeling like I was being boastful or like I was trying to be a show off, or I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but
no, your show off is 100% right. That's how it would have been presented to us, in my opinion, is being a show off. So it is difficult to do that. And I don't really know. For me, it was more about just finding my voice, and it took me a long time to do that. So it took confidence to say, this is something, I came up with, or I had this idea, or that sort of thing. It took me a while to get there, to really just, instead of saying, oh, I feel like I'm being boastful, or I'm, it's the pride, it's the, that sort of thing. And, to get away from that, it's just one of those of like, why am I hiding who I am? And I'm also, though, I am a very big person of giving credit. I like people to know
I've heard you do
whose
that,
idea it was, and I like people to know when it was a good idea. Oh, hey, whoever had this idea of doing this, I think it's a good idea. What's your feedback? I like to give credit to other people as well. So I don't know if they go together.
I think they do. Yeah. I think that's a good point. It made me think of, though, when you said that, the one thing I would caution women, especially younger women new to business, but any woman really, about, though, is like, I'm like you, right? Especially with my team, I always give away credit, want to make sure that, and I think that's an important part of leadership, like we've discussed before, right? But one of the things I would caution about is giving away credit where it's not deserved, in order to not seem boastful or like a show off, because that's one of the things I've seen women do, is give away, like it was a team effort, right? And I'm not talking about your own team, right? But I'm talking about when it's something that you did, and that you did the work for, and it wasn't a team effort, but you're trying to seem like a team player. That's dangerous, in my opinion. That's walking a dangerous line, because that leaves the door open for someone else to say, well, she didn't. She just said, and sometimes I think it sounds like that. I think sometimes if you do that, oh, well, it was a team effort, that to somebody above you, it might sound like other people did the work, and you're trying to add yourself in there.
And you're not giving them credit. You're trying to take the credit. I agree. I agree completely.
It's one of those really fine line things where if you did the work, say, I'm really proud of the input I got from others that enabled me to do this project, or I'm really proud of the support people gave me by taking care of XYZ while I did this project.
Right.
Yes. I would be
Mhm.
very cautious of, assigning credit where it's not there, because
Right.
that's a slippery slope, because it can
Mhm.
seem like the other people actually did the work. Kind of like if you think about a school project, right?
I was
And
just thinking that as a group project. Yes.
right. And maybe you didn't do anything, or somebody in the
Mhm.
group didn't. And, they're
Mhm.
like, oh, well, we did so good. And the other group members are there
Mhm.
going, no,
You weren't
you didn't
there.
do
Yeah.
anything." Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think people are so conditioned to that if you're
Mhm.
giving away credit that is not genuine, it could seem
Mhm.
like you're the one taking credit where you don't
Yes, exactly.
So
Mhm.
I would say just be authentic, right? Be
Yeah.
authentic. Don't throw anybody under the bus, but also
Right.
don't be afraid to claim, like she said, claim your role, claim your contribution.
Absolutely. Know your worth. Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, and that just reminded me when I was reading the show notes, it reminded me of this clip from Working Girl where you can just kind of see, to set it up. Sigourney Weaver's Catherine, right? And then there's Tess, and Tess is the Melanie Griffith
Mhm.
character. And Tess, I think it's her first like real job, I think, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly. But
Mhm.
she is just full of ideas, right? And so she goes in to tell her boss, her new boss, Catherine, who Catherine is trying to claw her way to the top. And she goes in to tell her new boss, Catherine, one of her ideas. And you can just see when we show this clip, Catherine, in my opinion, it was like it should have just been a bubble over her head, because
Right.
just see what Catherine was thinking. So here we go.
Yeah.
I have an idea, and you said I could come to you.
Shoot.
Well,
first
you
she
know
said
how
it was
Trask
listener.
Industries has been looking to buy into broadcasting?
Something about it. The department is
Working on it, yeah. I've been following it myself, and all of a sudden I thought, radio.
Trask's looking for television stations.
Well, so is every Tom, Dick, and Harry. See, my idea is that they get their feet wet in radio and build from there. I mean, it's not as glamorous as jumping right into TV, but it's a solid place to start, and there's a lot more of them for sale. Plus, it would solve Trask's problem with his Japanese competitors trying to take him over, because FCC forbids foreign ownership of radio as well as TV.
Interesting. You've been following this, you say?
Yeah.
No chance you overheard it, say, on the elevator.
Mhm.
No, no way.
Somewhere.
It's my idea.
Good.
Okay, so much interesting there, right? So
Yes,
first she's
yes.
ignoring her. She's just completely, totally ignoring her. And then she realizes the idea has merit, and she's making sure that nobody else can claim this idea, that it's just
Right.
those two that know about it, right?
Mhm.
And then she said, so you've been following this, like I could just see her, which she does, right? Planning for the future and what else other ideas she's going to milk from Melanie Griffith. It was,
Mhm.
and later, of course, Melanie Griffith does get the opportunity in an elevator with the owner of the company to prove that she's the one with the idea, because she has all this knowledge about it. And the knowledge, convinces the owner that Catherine
That's
was the one
right.
who stole the idea, but not before.
Show your work.
Yep. But not before Catherine gets Tess fired. So it's a great movie.
Mhm.
It's such a good movie for women in business. If you're a woman in business and you haven't watched Working Girl, I would say, what are you even doing?
Mhm. Right?
Because there's so much about it, and it's just
Mhm.
a really a good example of the challenges that can come into play when
Absolutely.
women have friendships at work and trusting the wrong
Mhm.
people, and when support turns into subtle sabotage or
Right.
real sabotage, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And then, as we talked about last week, there's the whole tall poppy syndrome, which, those of you who don't know, that's when the tall poppy that, is such a performer, or that stands out, that people start to want to cut the tall poppy down to make themselves feel better. Yeah.
Right.
All right, let's go on to our segment 4, which is, are any work
Yeah.
tips real? And so I'm going to play this clip, and then I'm going to let you kind of take it away and you kind of drive us here. But these are those 7 signs of fake friends. And this is kind of where I was saying that, basically it's a good test, right?
Right.
Wrong video. Let's see. It's a good test to see, in general, right? How
Mhm.
I'm gonna let you talk for a second while I go find this clip, but it's a good test. If they're
It is a
friends,
good test, and I mean, to know if it's gonna last outside of it, right? So
Mhm.
some of it too is it's about having shared values and
Mhm.
shared, interests, whether it's family or music or, just something that's going to continue outside of the workplace to make that connection
absolutely.
different than just a work situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's for sure. And it's fake friends and work fake friends, it basically share while real friends and real work friends share some of the same characteristics. Fake friends and in work and in life share a lot of the same
Mhm.
characteristics. So I
Mhm.
found the video. Yay, lucky, good thing for YouTube history. I hate when I copy the wrong link, but here we go. And as we're listening to this, I want you to be thinking about, these things that fake friends do. And that's what the video is about, but also how it correlates to what we've been talking
Mhm.
about at work. And if you want me to stop anytime, Michelle, just go stop and I'll stop it.
Hi Psych2Goers, and welcome back to another video. We're glad to see you here and want to thank you for supporting us. Your ongoing help, sharing, and liking. While it's painful to find out that the people you once consider your close friends turn out to be fake, it hurts even more to keep denying yourself the truth and stay with someone who isn't any good for you. If you enjoyed watching this video, give us a thumbs up and share it with someone who might continue our mission to make psychology more accessible to everyone. Now, back to the video.
Here we go. Okay.
Fake friends are selfish, manipulative, and disingenuous towards you. They're focused on what you can do for them and could care less about you as a person. Are you wondering if you have a fake friend in your life? Here are 7 things that only a fake friend would do.
Here we go.
1. They talk about you behind your back. Do you find this person gossiping about you behind your back and spreading your secrets to everyone? No matter how juicy the rumor is or how popular it might make them, a true friend would never jeopardize your friendship or humiliate you like that by stabbing you in the back. But fake friends will talk trash about you and spread rumors about you when you're not looking. 2. They throw you under the bus.
Mhm.
When the going gets tough, fake friends are willing to just throw you under the bus and pin the blame on you if it means saving their own skin. They don't vouch for you, they don't take your side, and they certainly don't stick up for you when someone is hurting or belittling you. The truth is, they don't think you or your friendship is worth putting themselves at risk for. 3. They constantly cancel on you.
Oh, here's where
Have you
it gets
spent weeks
interesting. Doing the pause to avoid copyright, but this is where it gets interesting. So those first 2 are things we've already talked about, right? They
Yes.
they take credit. They might talk about you behind your back. They're
Mhm.
cliquey. When it started getting into these, and it goes into the heart of what you had in the show notes, these are
Mhm.
some of the ways that we haven't really talked about. But I think these are really good distinctions between
Yes.
work friends that are just work friends are going to have
Mhm.
these fake friend characteristics versus
Mhm.
real friends are going to be the opposite. So I think this
Right.
is what started getting interesting for me where I started seeing those correlations.
Yeah, absolutely.
weeks planning a trip only for your friends to cancel on you at the last minute? Was there something you were looking forward to doing with them, but they never even bothered to show up? No matter how many times you keep reminding them about it, your so-called friends never keep their word. You've had to learn the hard way over and over again that you can't ever count on them to come through for you. 4. They exclude you from their plans. Do they seem to conveniently forget to invite you to things?
That whole click
Do you
thing.
feel excluded from group activities more often than not? Even if you go out of your way to invite them or tell them about your plans, they just don't do the same for you. 5. They call just to ask you for favors.
Now, this one, of course, it doesn't have to be call, right? But it can be they stop by your desk,
Right.
they stop by your office, just
Mhm.
ask you for favors.
Mhm.
Does this situation
Yep.
sound familiar to you? Oh, hey, listen, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I need a really big favor. Do you think you could help me, please?
Mhm.
If this friend only ever calls you up to ask for your help, then they're probably a fake friend. Fake friends think it's okay to ghost you for weeks, only to pop up and ask you for a favor. They don't even bother to ask you how you're doing because, really, they're just using you to help fix their problem. And the moment you give them what they want, then they're out of your life once more. 6. They give you backhanded compliments.
I love this one.
Have they ever said things to you like, you did surprisingly well? Or, that was
Right.
better than I expected from you? Or maybe, you look so much better than you usually do.
Oh.
A backhanded compliment is something fake friends do to subtly put you down by making it sound like praise. It's a way to criticize you without being too obvious about it. It shows that they are jealous of you and that they judge you more harshly than they want to let on. What they really want to do is to take a dig at you and pass it on.
You know, I think that's a good word, right? Jealous is real friends, whether it be at work or, you know, in real life, IRL.
Right.
Real friends, I feel like, aren't jealous. I mean, obviously, jealousy from a normal human perspective comes about in any relationship in life, right?
Sure.
But I'm talking about to the extreme where they don't want you to be successful, where they
Correct.
don't want you to have good things happen. I think that's a different kind of jealousy, right?
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like that's something that I think can be seen, you know, in this like fake friend example. Jealousy is when that starts happening at work, or if it's happening at work, that's a pretty good sign that it's a work friend and not a real friend.
Yes.
It off as a bit of lighthearted teasing between friends. 7. They only talk about themselves. Do they go on and on about only themselves, their problems, and whatever else is going on in their own lives? Do they brush you off when you want to talk about your thoughts and feelings? Does it seem like they don't pay attention to any topic that doesn't involve them? The communication between you two feels largely one-sided because fake friends are self-absorbed and inconsiderate. They don't care much about you or what you have to say. Like any other kind of relationship, all relationships need honesty.
So that's kind of the gist of it. But I just thought that was so interesting that it was wow, this is not about work. It's about fake friends. And it's literally pointing out the difference between a real friend at work and a just a work friend.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's a great point because they're the same thing, right? Like a valid friend at work and a valid friend in life are going to have the same things. They're important. They support you no matter what. They're supportive. They're going to, you know, if they think that something's not right, they're going to give you an honest opinion.
Right. Right.
Right. They're not going to just say, oh, yeah, and just keep going.
Absolutely. And they're going to want to spend time with you even outside of work.
Right. Right.
You know, and, you know, you have some others. So I don't want to take your point.
No,
no,
I mean, it's the same thing, right? It's the celebrate the wins. They celebrate with you, even if you're up for the same position, you know, it's that sort of thing. Constructive feedback without fear. And they're not weaponizing it. Like I said, they're honest with you. They're honest with you from a good place, not to tear you down, but to help make you better.
That's exactly what I was thinking in my mind, what you just said. They're not in it to tear you down. They're in it to make you better.
Correct. And that's, you know, again, this goes back to what we've talked about with, you know, women supporting women. And this is how it should be, you know, and I mean, work friends and work allies are important, but they're not necessarily friends, right? Because it's valuable, but it's not a deep friendship. And it's not something that may last once you leave there. And learning the difference is where that's the growth, is where you learn when you learn the difference.
And, you know, some of the videos that we've looked at and that, you know, I was looking at in the prep for the show also made a really interesting point that many of the experts contend that until you know the difference, that you're never going to have as much success as you would have otherwise, because there are so many pitfalls and stumbling blocks that making bad decisions about, you know, treating someone like a real friend is not, even though, you know, sometimes there are exceptions, right? But in general, not knowing that difference, who is who, and being able to, you know, compartmentalize those relationships. A lot of the experts say until you learn to do that, that you're almost kind of doomed to not get as far ahead as you want to.
And it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, it looks like we're about an hour 15, so I won't play our last video, but let's talk about Parks and Recreation. You want to see an example of really good friends and friends who can or are real life friends. And I know it's a television show, but real life friends. It's a great example of friends who are real life friends as well as coworkers, but they go through some stuff. They go through some things, you know, they go through some ups and downs, but so do real friends, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Ultimately, though, they have the three things that you were talking about. You know, they hang out, they really care about each other's lives, they celebrate those wins, and they do give constructive feedback when it's needed, because we need that for growth, right? But we need it from the right place. So, Well, and I think we've proven, or we've maybe not proven, but we've gotten to the point that work friends can be real friends, but
Yes.
it's not as common as we think.
Mm-hmm.
And it does require, I think, a lot of caution and a lot of judgment and a lot of discretion and really thinking about it and not just kind of going with the flow. Like you were saying earlier, like where everybody is your friend, you got to realize that most likely very few people are your friend. And if you do
Right.
find a friend at work, it's not as common as you think. And you just need to make sure, like the one woman was saying, Tanya was saying, make sure you hold it against the same standards that you would hold for a IRL friend.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that's what we forget, right? We forget that they are supposed to be held to the same standard, because we have to see them all the time, and we know we're going to have to see them. So I think we intentionally don't, but we need to understand what the difference is when we don't do that.
For sure, because it can be tough and it can, here's the thing, that maybe we'll talk about in the future is course correction, because it can be tough. You kind of already let that, here's one of my Gen X expressions, let that horse out of the barn. It can be tough to put it back in, but it's not good enough, or it's not smart enough to say, well, okay, it just is what it is. There are ways to correct it, starting to put up your boundaries, starting to ease off, giving yourself some space, stop sharing so much. That's another kind of universal that I came across in doing the research for the show, is oversharing is one of the worst things you can do for your career, because it, the statistic, and I can't remember it, and that expression where 86% of all statistics are made up on the spot, including this one, but there's that, but it was a very high number that said that like something like 93% of the time it will somehow get shared against you. It will get used against you at some point when you overshare. Like,
yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
It was a really high percentage, and it does make sense, because again, it goes back to that point where it's those seeds, right? And and it's littering those seeds around, just waiting for the right opportunity, right growing season. I'm using way too many analogies, which I'm absolutely I'll stop. But anyway, yeah, I mean, just good points. Is just, again, hold it to the same standard, right?
Yes, definitely.
Anything else you want to add before we?
No, I don't think so. Just, you just got to protect yourself in every relationship, I think, is what it boils down to.
Absolutely. 100%. And that's just the smart thing to do. All right. Well, see you next time, Michelle.
All right. Thanks for hanging out, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.